Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rumble with Michael Moore. And I am Michael Moore. This is episode number 170 of this podcast. And today we're going to air part 2 from our special live recording of Rumble this past Monday, where we celebrated surpassing 25 million downloads in our first 14 months. So earlier this week in that episode 169, we published my conversation with rock legend and Pink Floyd co-founder Roger Waters, followed by a discussion with Detroit Congresswoman and squad member Rashida Tlaib. Go back and listen to that if you haven't had a chance. This became the next part of that live episode, what you're going to hear right now. You're going to hear my conversation with a personal hero of mine, the courageous Pentagon Papers whistleblower and peace activist, Daniel Ellsberg. But first up, right here, my conversation with one of our most beloved actors, a proud Michigander, and thanks to the Golden Globes last Sunday, America's newest fashion icon, Mr. Jeff Daniels. Jeff Daniels, welcome back to Rumble here. Really wonderful to have you with us here tonight. And thank you for dressing up for me. For those who are wondering why we're laughing about that, in case you didn't watch the Golden Globes or didn't see Jeff's name trending all over social media for the last 24 hours, it was because Jeff had decided that he was nominated for Best Actor in a limited series for the Comey role. And he played James Comey in that wonderful Showtime limited series and was nominated along with Bryan Cranston and Mark Ruffalo and others.
Yep, great people.
Wonderful group to be with. And they put up the 5 nominees on the screen from home.
Sure.
And, people they've got a coat on. I think somebody might have had a black tie.
Oh, not coats. Gowns.
Oh, no. Yes.
Designer suits. Production designers were brought in to orchestrate the plants and the lighting and the
hair and makeup was present in people's homes.
Oh my God. You could just tell that there was a lot of work put into a lot of these Zoom locations. Yes.
Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars was spent.
Could have been millions. Yeah.
On those gowns, on the hair and makeup, on the lighting, on the everything. And all of a sudden popping up on the screen when they announced that his nomination, Jeff Daniels, and there you are.
Yes.
Let me just ask. I'll just ask what they would ask you on the red carpet. Who dressed you tonight, Jeff?
Carhartt.
You're wearing Carhartt.
Carhartt.
Yes. For those
which was. I tweeted it an hour later when I realized that I had broken the internet. That this was a lifelong dream of mine. I have done tons of these red carpets, as you have, and You get asked the most inane questions sometimes, right. And I just didn't think it was important who I was wearing, and I never have done those red carpet interviews well. And one time, I forget which red carpet, but they said, "Who are you wearing?" And I just said Carhartt, and with a straight face. And I got nothing. I got nothing from this interviewer. And so, it's always been a dream of mine to go to an award show and wear a Carhartt. It's what I wear at home. It was a very nice flannel shirt. It was the best shirt I had because I'm on location. I'm in Pennsylvania. I ironed it. It was ironed,
Right. It was ironed. It looked clean.
It was right out of the washer. And, as being from Michigan and certain parts of Michigan, certainly where I live, that passes for elegant.
Oh, and that is dressing up.
Sure. Yeah. And I thought I was meeting all the, requirements.
Carhartt is designer. It has the name is right there.
Yeah.
Now for people who don't know Carhartt, I don't know if it is a Midwestern thing or working class.
It's construction wear. Basically, it's what you would wear if you were building a building. And
correct.
Correct. And,
but for a Sunday night for you, that would not be unusual for you to be in that flannel shirt.
Correct.
On a Sunday night.
Yeah.
On any given Sunday night.
Sure. which is when this awards event occurred. And so the two kind of, worked out great.
So the only thing I thought later that would have made it funnier is if when they cut to in the leading actress category, which Jodie Foster won, and they went to her there at her home. She's in her pajamas with her wife.
Loved it.
Yes. And I thought, wow, right now, if I were like directing the show, I would have Jeff walk in with a bowl of popcorn and serve them their latest batch of popcorn. But Jeff, okay, see, now this is what happens. This is the world we live in now is so focused on something like this. And we only have a few minutes here on this particular live episode. And I've already used up 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
About what? No, it's not your fault, but I did it. I fell to it. And there's so much going on in this country. I haven't talked to you since the election. You were on Rumble beforehand.
Yep.
You have in Michigan been a very big supporter of our governor. You supported her publicly. You did a wonderful thing actually nationally for before the election to get people out to vote. And I now that all 4 of our top leadership positions in Michigan are Democrats, and both U.S. senators are Democrats, and I think we picked up another Democratic congressional seat. I have been, as you know, begging you for years to run in Michigan for U.S. Senate, for governor.
You have brought it up, yes.
But now there's no more Democratic positions open.
No, which is what I was waiting for.
So now you can just stick to the acting. And what are you doing in Pennsylvania? What are you?
I'm in a week-long protocol. I'm going to do a series for Showtime called American Rust. That's based on a book by Philip Meyer. So we were going to do it a year ago, almost to the day, and the pandemic hit, and so 1 year later we're back and we're going to start shooting next week.
But you're working. I mean, when we spoke before, you and many of us in this industry have not been weren't working, and now it's starting to come back a bit. Is that your sense of it? That some things are getting made now?
Yeah, I mean, we're still. I mean, the safest place on the planet is the set of American Rust because the protocols and the testing is so thorough. But I've got 2 doses of Moderna in me. Happily, I am of age, so I feel better about that. I think in 30 days the supply of the vaccine, from everything I'm seeing, is going to be just ramping up. Johnson & Johnson. I mean, it's by June. But if people do it, I think we're going to be in a better place. And but I'm an actor looking at the internet and watching the news, so what do I know? But it feels like we're coming out the other end of this thing if people behave and they go get the vaccine. And then I think I'm hoping that by the summer, I mean, we're going to shoot through the early August, that we'll get some of the protocols relaxed. But that's up to the guys. That's up to the pros.
Right. We're a month and almost 2 weeks into the Biden Harris era. How are you feeling about things and how the changes you've noticed? I mean, you're in Pennsylvania right now. I'm just curious how you're personally feeling about how the new president has started his administration.
Well, considering how he had to overcome January 6th and all of that, and the Republicans are still in the news. They're still controlling the news cycle. They're a minority party now, but that befuddles me a little bit. But I think Biden, like the opposite of Trump, is doing things very quietly. He's getting things done. He's going to work. He's not going to fix everything in a day. And there's forward progress. I keep watching the Republicans. I keep watching this show between Liz Cheney and Kevin McCarthy and CPAC and all of those Republicans like that you and I know back in Michigan that are where are you? Where are you sitting? Or are you just going to go default and press the Trump button because you can get your tax cuts? I got to watch those people to see if they break from the people at CPAC. Is there going to be a break in the Republican Party? It's hard for people like Nikki Haley to let go of all the Trump supporters because she needs them. And you can see them kind of straddling it. And then Liz Cheney goes, to hell with you. The Republican Party is not going to be that. So I'm curious as to where the Republican Party is going to be in 6 months. In the meantime, Biden and Harris are going to do what they can do. And
forge ahead.
To the degree that they can. Yeah. I mean, they've got, I don't know enough about the filibuster to go get rid of it. And I just don't know enough. But I do know that consider the alternative. Consider if Trump had won in November, but that's a reach. Consider if the Republicans had won in Georgia. We're in a different ball game, and I just think it's time for America to come to Jesus a little bit. Pick your religion, but are we gonna settle for truth, or are we gonna settle for lies? Are we gonna settle for fact, or are we gonna settle for fiction? Are we gonna obey the rule of law for everyone, or do some people get to be corrupt and skate around it?
Right.
I think it's time, and that's in the Republican Party, and it's hard to get some of them to face that.
Yeah. And there were 74 million that voted for Trump.
There are 74 million people out there. That's right. There's a lot of people. And to think that this is just going to go away, systemic racism has been with us for 400 years, ever since the first slave got off the ship in Virginia. And it came over with them on the Mayflower, for God's sake. And that's baked into the cake. And there are people that are going to hang on to that. And that's what worries me.
My hope is that if Biden, and not just the politicians, but all the rest of us who wanted this change to occur, who wanted Trump to go away, that if we're able to do enough things to show people, look, you don't have to become a Democrat.
Yes.
Don't ever call yourself a liberal. Just how about this? How about not having to worry about losing your house if you get sick?
Right.
We'll fix that for you, so that'll never happen. How about your kids being able to afford to go to college? We'll do that, and we'll do it for you too, not just for our kids, but your kids too. Maybe if we do enough of that, if somebody making $7.25 an hour in those, unlike Michigan and some states, we've already raised the minimum wage, but I think there's 29 states that have done that, but the others haven't. Just imagine if your pay was doubled. What would your life be like? What if women were paid the same as men? What if you, as a woman, or your wife, is making $1 less an hour than this guy doing the same job right next to her? What would you do with that $40 extra a week? I mean, that's the way I've been trying to present it. That okay, we know you don't like Democrats and liberals and Michael Moore, but I'm going to go the extra yard or 2 or 100 for you too. I want you to benefit. And maybe, Jeff, just enough we'll see, you know what? Okay, these guys aren't so bad. I'm making more money. My wife is paid the same as the men at work.
I mean, that's a great point.
Yes.
But that's going to take a year. That's going to take 6 months to a year of Biden stuff coming through for them to go, wait a minute. Now, maybe I don't want to say lied to, but maybe I was conned, and they might come to it a little bit. I think what's also going to help is seeing Trump walk into a courtroom and
the facts coming out.
Now, it may jumpstart some people that get even angrier about that, but I think, that's who you're backing. He's just going into the courtroom, and there's a pretty good chance, whenever that happens, that he's not going to be coming out. And then where are you?
Yeah.
So I'll be, like I said, I'll be watching a lot of things over the next 6 months to a year, and those are 3 of them in particular.
When do you think you'll be back in Michigan?
Me?
Yeah.
A couple of weeks.
Oh, okay. You're just in Pennsylvania just for this.
Yeah, I'm like in Pittsburgh. I'm back and forth. Yeah, I'll be back. It's a great gig. I mean, if I have 4 days off, I'm like, oh my God, I can drive home. I couldn't do that on Newsroom.
No, that's right. But that's, yes, Pittsburgh. What is that? I know from Flint, it's about like 4.5 hours, I think. It's not
5 if you
five,
bring
is it?
dogs and you got to
Well,
stop. Yeah,
yeah. Okay. I don't have dogs, and I never need to stop.
I see. I see. Okay. I won't go into that. We had a scene in Dumb and Dumber with some empty bottles, but I won't go any further.
Right. But thank you for referencing Dumb and Dumber, as we often do here on Rumble. So, Jeff, I really appreciate you just popping into this here to celebrate our 25 millionth download of this podcast. And you're one of my favorite people. You're a good friend. And I was so grateful that earlier in this first year that you came on the podcast and participated in this.
I think it's a great thing. 25 million of anything is a great thing. Congratulations.
Yes. Well, thank you. And keep doing the great work that you do, and keep caring about this wonderful country as I have seen you do over many, many years. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, my friend. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Daniels. Before we bring on Daniel Ellsberg, I want to welcome a new underwriter to Rumble, Amazon Studios, and their very powerful documentary film, All In, The Fight for Democracy. All In was directed by Liz Garbus and Lisa Cortez, and it documents the brilliant Stacey Abrams and her Herculean efforts to fight the racist voter suppression. Yes, this is the Stacey Abrams film that you've been hearing about, and I have to tell you, it's incredible. And Stacey Abrams also serves as a producer of this film. All In also shows the long and ugly history of voter disenfranchisement in this country and how it currently threatens everything that we hold dear today. My friends, we are the majority of this country, but we will keep losing elections as long as one major political party is committed to the elimination of our voting rights for our fellow citizens. Democracy is something that we must actively and ferociously fight for, or else we won't have one. And this movie, All In, The Fight for Democracy, explores these fundamental questions. Who gets to participate in our democracy, and who does not? Most importantly, it demonstrates how we can fight back. It actually gives you solutions that you and I and every other person can do to protect the democracy of this country. And it's no surprise to see all the accolades that this film has been piling up, including nominations from the Writers Guild of America for Best Documentary of the Year, the NAACP Image Awards, the Hollywood Critics Association, and most recently, this film has been shortlisted by Academy members for the Oscars for Best Documentary. So I want to urge all of you to watch All In, The Fight for Democracy. It's available now on Prime. I'll have a link to the film in the description page of this episode. And I personally want to thank Amazon Studios, not just for supporting this podcast and supporting my voice and supporting filmmakers like Liz Garbus and Lisa Cortez, but for all the good work that Prime does in supporting documentary nonfiction film at a time when we need nonfiction more than ever. And I thank Amazon Studios for helping me bring my voice to the millions who have been listening to this podcast in this first year. And we're really lucky today because this episode, celebrating our 25 millionth download, it not only has another underwriter, the other underwriter is Amazon Studios for another incredible documentary that they put out there this year, and another one that has been shortlisted for the Oscars. And this powerful and beautiful documentary is called Time. Time is the feature documentary debut of a talented young filmmaker. Her name is Garrett Bradley, and she has accomplished something profound here. She has made both a beautiful love story, but also a powerful and devastating film about America's cruel and racist prison industrial complex. The film tells the story of a woman named Fox Rich, who has spent the last 2 decades of her life campaigning for the release of her husband, Rob G. Rich. He's serving a 60-year sentence for a robbery they both committed in the early 90s in a moment of desperation. Bradley paints a mesmerizing portrait of the resilience and radical love necessary to prevail over the endless separations caused by this country's mass incarceration epidemic. So let me mention just a few of the places that have already given this film awards for either Best Documentary, Best Director, etc. The Gotham Awards, New York City, the Doc NYC Film Festival, the Sundance Film Festival, the International Documentary Association Documentary Awards, the New York Film Critics Circle, the Los Angeles Film Critics Circle, the National Society of Film Critics, the Full Frame Documentary Film Festival, and the Zurich Film Festival. And as I said, it's now just been recently shortlisted for the Academy Awards. So do yourself a favor. Watch this movie. It's called Time. Watch it this weekend on Prime. I'll have a link to the film right here on the description page of this episode. And again, I want to thank Amazon Studios for supporting me and this podcast, my voice, and supporting the work of talented filmmakers like Garrett Bradley and her excellent film, Time. I've actually just been told that we have with us the individual who was our second guest on Rumble back on, I believe, 14 months ago. And geez, I guess now it's March. Man, time flies. Well, we were so happy to have him on then. He has been a hero of mine since I was a teenager. He worked inside the government and he had served in Vietnam, and he saw the lie firsthand and couldn't live with it and had to tell the American people and had to get the evidence that he knew that the United States government had compiled over the years in terms of as they built the lie about how we had to go and win in Vietnam for our security, which was all a fraud. And a lot of us at that time knew it was, but we didn't have the goods until he went and got the goods and made sure that it appeared in many newspapers around the country, most notably the New York Times and the Washington Post. But he was with us at the beginning of Rumble some 14 months ago, and he is with us here tonight. Please, all of you watching, give a warm virtual welcome to the great Daniel Ellsberg. Daniel.
Introduction. Michael, I was your second guest. I have to ask, who was the first?
Nobody. I was. You actually were the first. You were on the second episode. But the first episode was just me explaining to people what Rumble was going to be. Yeah. Just a little kind of brief introduction. And then the first person we put on was you. Wow. You were the first voice. And then the next day, Congress was going to vote on impeaching Donald Trump, the first impeachment. And we just said, God, we should just get on the train right now. And we went down to DC like on no notice, got on an early morning train and we got into the gallery, into the balcony, and we sat there and watched the final debate and the vote. And we had our recording equipment with us, and they wouldn't let us use it there, because the floor of our Congress is sacred.
Oh.
Back in remember those days? And so we recorded the podcast on that last Amtrak out of DC that has so many people, so many government officials coming to New York at night. I've ridden that train for many years. I have sat across from the FBI director. I sat across from Colin Powell all through the years. And on this night, it was impeachment night. But the night before, it was you. And and I'll tell you, and it was just, I've we don't see each other a lot, you and I, but I've known you over many years, many movements, many protests. You have been this force for good. You've been a guiding star to all of us. You took risks that, what you did is what they're hoping to put certain people in jail for who told us the truth about the Iraq War, who took documents and gave them to the New York Times and the Washington Post.
You're right.
And yet, look at the threat that Ed is facing, and others. Even no matter how you feel about Julian Assange, I mean, certainly nobody was angry at him for telling us the truth and getting those documents. However, WikiLeaks got them. We finally learned what Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld were up to, and history now will record the illegality and the immorality of that invasion of Iraq, and we wouldn't have had that had it not been for WikiLeaks and Assange. And I know I say that, and then a lot of people are, oh yeah, look what he did to Hillary or whatever, and that story is yet to be told. And someday, the piece of it I know, I will tell that story. And I think people are going to be pretty surprised. Nonetheless, in your day, you did this. And I would imagine when you took the Pentagon Papers and made sure that they were read by the American people.
No, that's another matter. Getting them read, I don't think I succeeded in that. But New York Times sold a lot of books anyway on it, Bantam. And yeah, there was a lot of discussion. But getting them read, a little too much.
You mean because the volumes of them was too much to?
Well, people in the government don't read things to start with. In the government, in the public, they do, of course. But there was 4,000 pages that I put out, 3,000 I didn't put out, except to Congress. But
well, whatever got published, I read as a teenager. We're talking 1971 here, right?
Correct.
And
how old were you?
In 71, I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
So yes, I was 16, 17 years old.
You're older than I thought, Michael. I'm always interested in generations to see what history people lived through. Yeah, you've been around longer than I realized. But you know what? I first met you when you were brought in as the blue-collar, working-class rebel uprouser for Mother Jones. And I was very sorry to see you leave that, but you made very good use of your life after that. Right livelihood.
No, thank you for saying that. I remember speaking. Oh my God, to you. I met with so many people. Jim Ridgway, who sadly just passed away. Alex Coburn. I remember meeting with Abby Hoffman too. But yes, that job did not last long. I had a series of disagreements with the owner of the magazine, and it only lasted a few months. And I think that was supposed to have been the end of me. Nobody was going to hear from me again. Well, so I lucked out.
Yeah, we all lucked out. I'll never forget your Oscar speech when you talked about, to a vast audience here, that we had gone down a rabbit hole. Wasn't that your line? And we had a fictitious president at that time. Boy, you didn't know what fictitious was yet at that point.
I could barely pronounce it. George W. Bush. George W. Bush was elected with fictitious election results. Yes, that's what I said on the stage. And I think I've pointed out. I got booed off.
I used to think of it for years. I talked about trying to tell people what our problem was as I newly saw it, that we had to understand this is a country that almost elected George W. Bush, twice. And now, of course, Trump just the other day announced that he's going for a third win. Listen, had we been, if 20,000 or so, I've heard, maybe it's 50,000, votes had gone differently in the swing states, we would be talking tonight with Trump actually in the White House.
That's correct.
And imagine what our conversation would have to be at that point. I really admired. I loved hearing your previous guest. Not only what he was saying was so optimistic, but his spirit and energy, and yours too. And I was thinking, would it be possible to talk like that if we had Trump as our president right now? As 74, a fraction of the 74 million think he is, basically. He's our legitimate president. So we're living in a country talking about fictitious things or hoaxes or frauds. We're living in a country with a mass delusion in front of us that we can really perceive. Would we have thought, is it possible for 50 million people to be that crazy, that divorced from reality?
74 million voted for Trump. 74 million.
Yeah, I think of it that in a way, if they watch Fox News, which Patricia and I do from time to time, say, look, we got to look at Fox as your previous president. You can't just look at MSNBC all the time.
Right.
We last usually about 3 minutes, but it's enough when we turn the channel to Fox. But it's enough to realize if this is your main source of news, and you're listening to your president and his tweets, and you elected him, you voted for him, why wouldn't you believe that he was elected and that Biden is not really our legitimate president and so forth? How could you believe differently? It's their universe that they live in. They didn't just make this one all up. That lets them a little bit off the hook. But it raises a question that I haven't seen raised too much about the January 6th insurrection, whatever it was, which is, if you truly believe that these senators inside are about to certify somebody who actually was not the legitimate president, who had been deprived, what should you do? Well, you shouldn't beat policemen to death or at all, or beat them at all with American flags. You shouldn't break glass, et cetera, et cetera. But people haven't asked, what should they do? Just sit back and watch? So that's a problem we face. It's not unlike the Civil War right now, in the sense that not fully half the country, but a large part of the country is living in a different universe of values and beliefs and expectations. And with that, it's not easy for me to be quite as optimistic.
We don't have false hope or false optimism. Our eyes are wide open and we know what we're facing. But you bring up this point that we would be sitting here tonight in a different frame if, and I have the exact numbers for you here. It's almost, it's just a difference of 40,000. Trump won the Electoral College in 2016 with 77,000 vote difference when he won Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Just 77,000 votes. If people had changed, would have made the difference. This time, Biden won by 3 states, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia, with almost only 40,000 votes. 40,000 votes. Yeah. 77,000 4 years ago, just a 40,000 vote difference this time in just those 3 states. And you asked the question, what would tonight look like? Our little celebration here of our 25 million downloads. I want to say something I have not said publicly, because I felt like I knew the answer to that question, and I and others who, let's just say, have been on Trump's list for a number of years, because we stick it to him in the worst possible ways as far as he sees it, and we are relentless about it and have been relentless about it. And we, in the months leading up to the election, talked about this, and I would say that there was a consensus amongst us that his enemies list, if he were to be reelected, he was not just going to sit by and let us get away with what we said and did to him and about him. And I'm not going to name names here, but some had made their plans, if they needed to, have a plan B to get the hell out of Dodge. Because we knew Trump would seek revenge, and he would have the power of the state and the military and the police. Most police departments endorsed him for his reelection. And a number of us had to hire security, thinking if it went one way on election night, well, actually, if it went either way, whether he lost and there would be an uprising like we saw on January 6th, or if he won, his minions would be out looking for blood and revenge for those who dare to stop their king. And this was on our minds. This was no joke. Would we be sitting here tonight? Maybe, and maybe not. had he won. I don't ever want to get that close again to finding out.
Yeah. And so we really have to think hard how we avoid that. And really, I don't think you and I, anybody that I know knows enough of how we got right where we are. And where we are, as you say, is a country that really did almost elect Trump in the Electoral College, which is why isn't there a bigger move to get rid of the Electoral College after this? It still doesn't.
Absolutely. No, it should be top of the agenda. Seriously, we have to get rid of it.
But
and the filibuster.
When you were mentioning earlier here that you were on the last Amtrak out of Washington at a certain point. Well, that Amtrak out of Washington, out of D.C., would have had a lot of people we know, friends of ours, I guess, on that, and going further than Philadelphia or Boston. But you say, what would it be like? Well, let me go to what I think is the number one thing. I don't think that civilization, going big here now, would fail to show the harm that another 4 years of Trump maximizing fossil fuel emissions, maximizing extraction, new lands, offshore, Arctic, Antarctic, everywhere he goes, doing everything he can, with subsidies to increase the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere in his 4 years. Well, we've got a window here, as Greta Thunberg has been saying for a couple of years now, pointing out simply, that in theory, it's 2030. We should be reducing those emissions by 50%. And according to the specialists in the UN, the experts, and be out of it by 2050. Now, is that going to happen? No, I really don't think that's going to happen, which means that we're in, not for the ultimate catastrophe, but we're in for catastrophic change, I would say, baked in right now. But with Trump for 4 years more, and possibly somebody asking him, as I say, the world climate would show the scars of that forever, as far as humans are concerned, thousands of years. And we couldn't afford that. Let me leap right up to the present. Biden, an enormous difference there, has a plan that in scale is on mark, pretty much a couple $1 trillion. I'm not talking about the stimulus plan, but the climate plan has, I'm told by friends of mine who are experts, like Robert Poland, that the scale is about right. But the allocation of interest, of energy? No, actually not. So much on carbon capture and on cap and trade, and on, new technologies of things that may or may not come in. Actually, no. We can't afford even a plan as much better than Trump's as Biden's. It's got to be better. We don't have time to fool around with things that are extremely inadequate. But, the difference is enormous. And we just dodged a bullet on climate and on other things. The thing you were pointing to, Michael, was fascism. It's not just that he has a little list like Nixon. I guess you were probably on that. I was on that, the enemies list. But it would be very, very wide and broad. I think people like us wouldn't be on the air, actually. And I was particularly worried, by the way, that this is yet another subject, that he would attack Iran in order to distract attention at the last. That's where my attention was focused for the last couple of months. I'm very glad. I think we got by that very narrowly. And that would be a catastrophe even worse than Iraq and Vietnam and Afghanistan altogether. Even though it didn't become a nuclear war, and he was threatening North Korea before he fell in love with Kim, with the fury the world has never seen with nuclear weapons. The idea, which apparently his appointee John Bolton favored, of an attack on North Korea is as close to insanity as you can get. Well, right. As close, it's attacking Russia, so China would be that much more. But yes, this would be a limited war. When you say you can't win a nuclear war, you know what, in some sense or other, in various senses, we would have won a nuclear war against North Korea, but at the cost of millions and millions of dead in North Korea to start with, including South Koreans and even Japanese. But in this country, all that Kim or now has to do is have a boat with a nuclear device in it offshore Los Angeles and San Francisco and a couple ports in the west coast, east coast. No big problem for him. And again, you're talking about millions of deaths. So
we dodged a lot of
Yes,
we dodged a lot of bullets. I agree with you, though. I'm not so sure we dodged the environmental bullet. I think
not yet. No, by no means.
No, and in fact, some say we may have blown it. We may have gone too far. We were warned years and years ago by that scientists at NASA and others that we only had so much time.
Yeah.
And they kept talking about, oh, let's have these accords and we'll have till 2050. And I'm like, are you crazy? But this is another whole episode that we did this year on our environmental movement has gotten into bed with corporations and Wall Street and won't denounce capitalism in the sense that how so many of these decisions are being made for profit and for greed. And Greta comes along and gets right in every adult's face with it, which I'm so grateful for her, standing up to the adults and saying, look at the world you're leaving me and my generation. And it's disheartening. It doesn't mean we can't give up, but someday I'd love to talk to you about this, because I think we either need some kind of new leadership or a new direction or whatever, because of all the movements of the 50, 60 years where you've been involved, we have made progress when it comes to stopping wars. We've made progress when it comes to women's rights and to race, and we're not anywhere near where we need to be. Don't get me wrong on any of this, but there have been steps. There have been steps forward. Other than at the very beginning with Earth Day, we got the EPA, we got the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act. Man, there has been hardly anything since then, and if anything, reversal, going backwards.
Well, look, I'm very happy to have met a hero of mine, Greta Thunberg, in Sweden, actually. I stood with Patricia and I stood with her in front of the parliament there on a very snowy day with about 60 people. Within months, she had several million people, not 60. School
mostly
kids,
mostly young people. Yeah.
Mostly young people.
Yeah.
I mean, really young, grade school, high school.
Yeah.
And then within a year, she had about 15 million people around the world. So on the one hand, you could say, wow, this is very inspiring, as it is. This shows what you can do, what one person can do getting it started, and then a lot of other people. But their other quality is to be extremely candid and forthright, as she was in front of all these grown-up people at Davos and the UN and elsewhere in parliaments. She doesn't hold back, and she says the measure of what's happening here is not how many people we have yet in the streets, but the fact that emissions are going up. They are not going down. That is the measure. And she would be the first to say, I'm sure, the first to say right now, it hasn't done it. It hasn't helped. It is going up. This is not happening. And as you were saying, the Biden plan, of course, is enormously different. It is a plan in the right direction. But if it's far from adequate, that's not good. Is that oil going to actually stay in the ground that Exxon owns and that Chevron owns and that Aramco owns? Is it really going to stay in the ground and they don't make any profit out of it? They write it off as sunk costs and so forth. I'll tell you, I think, as I see probabilities, if I were going to, I don't see it. I don't think that's going to happen. And that means total catastrophe ahead of us for not just for our grandchildren. It's for us and our children, not for me, probably, but even my own children who are not young. And I think what I find myself doing is acting as if it were still possible to do this, and that has worked out in the past. It looks to me impossible, but then impossible things have happened in the past. It turns out you're old enough, Michael, I remember now, to remember what a miracle it was, a secular miracle for the Berlin Wall to come down. And by a miracle, I mean, that wasn't looked at, let's say in 83 or 84, that wasn't looked at as unlikely or even very unlikely. It was impossible. It was unthinkable that the Berlin Wall would come down in 1989. No chance of that. Mandela coming to power without a violent revolution in South Africa, not possible. So these things can happen, usually in very unexpected ways, and it keeps us going. But I think two things, I can't bring myself to be inspiring in the form of saying, we can do it. It'll happen if we just turn our minds to it. I'm afraid that's not the way it is. That's not the way life is. And all I can say is, unlikely as it seems to happen, to work, everything is at stake. And yes, it is worth your life's work. It's worth any risk or cost you might take to try to keep it going.
So you do have this optimism in you. How old are you now?
If you call that optimism.
How old are you now?
I'm 89. Actually, I'll be 90 on April 7th.
Okay, so you're still young. You're still in your 80s. But seriously, but it's so heartening, though, to hear you say that you still believe it's worth the fight, that we shouldn't give up. Yeah. And we need to hear that, because we have lived and gone through now another dark time. And we are cooped up in our homes by and large by this deadly virus that was ignored, and we were lied to about it, and we're so far behind on trying to contain it now. So I mean, I can't thank you enough for what you've done, your life's work, what you said here tonight on this occasion for our podcast.
Can I tell you the dark side? the bad news.
Leave us on a good bad news note.
Well, we haven't talked about nuclear weapons and nuclear war and the possibility not of warming, which is on the way, warming, but the cold, the nuclear winter that would come if the stockpile that Obama paid for and Trump increased and Biden has shown no inclinations to reduce. Whatever, the DoD budget as a whole, but specifically the intercontinental ballistic missiles that should not have existed for the last half century, if ever. Right. Absolutely. Still going ahead because Northrop Grumman needs to keep its assembly lines going. And we're not showing any sign of backing away from that. So with that, and the racism that has been exposed, and to me, at 90, I think Charlottesville, just 4 years ago, started me investigating what's going on here in a way that made it, what happened just now in the election, with 74 million people, a little less surprising, as a fault in this country. So it comes down to my attitude toward this country and what the obstacles are in the country. As an old friend of mine, William Gibson, who was a playwright, used to say, sometimes the audience is the flop. And the audience is part of the problem here. The public here is part of the problem. And we've got to see that. So with the things I've learned from all these years, I think of two things. One is I had a favorite book when I was a kid. Maybe you read it, Scaramouche by Raphael Sabatini. And I always remember the first line about Scaramouche. He was born with a gift of laughter and a sense that the world was mad. And, each year that goes by, we're looking right now, at our commander of Strategic Command, Charles Richard, an admiral, talking about this year under Biden, we must be prepared to fight a nuclear war with Russia and China. I say, fight a nuclear war, right? In other words, we must be prepared for omnicide, for killing nearly everyone. Not unless we have to, but only if we have to. We have to prepare for that, which we have been doing for 60 years, and we're still at it. So I was I don't know. Mike Tyson. You remember, you know him. In fact, you just fought a demonstration fight, right? And he was the youngest heavyweight champion. Very long time heavyweight champion. Has the hardest punch of anybody. Practically one of the hardest. Very hard childhood, and he was in prison twice. So once for rape and for other things, and he always regretted publicly that he hadn't killed anyone in the ring. That way he was envious of somebody who had. And so Customato, his manager, who had actually adopted him as a guardian, legal guardian, had a very hard childhood. And Customato said of him, Mike Tyson has his good points and his bad points. It's his bad points that aren't so good. And I've had, that's the way I think, I'm sorry to say, of my country and of the human species right now, the human species. We have our good points and our bad points aren't so good. And that's where we are. And keep at it. We're on the Titanic, heading into Icefield at a dark night, full speed ahead. And on climate, we may have hit the iceberg, but we don't know. And we just have to, the Titanic could have stopped as other ships did. The Titanic could have changed course. But as you mentioned, for profit, they wanted to set a speed record, which they hadn't even advertised. But they wanted to surprise people with the fastest thing. So they couldn't afford to go south or stop when they got the warning that there was ice ahead. Right. Full speed ahead in the dark. Well, that's where we're going. So it's our job to turn this ship around.
Right. I believe that, and that's what we're going to do. And I know it won't be easy. And I'm glad you're still here with us to help us turn that ship around. So thank you. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Michael.
No, I'm deeply honored that you came on tonight. They had just texted me here 20 minutes ago and said you were waiting to come on, and it was like, oh wow, Daniel, thank you, and please stay in touch with us and come back on Rumble if you can.
Showed us the rabbit hole we're in, and you're our guide out of it, Michael. Thank you.
No pressure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Daniel Ellsberg.
If you miss the train I'm on, you will know that I am gone. You can hear the whistle blow 100 miles.
Well, that's it for Rumble today. Wonderful episode. Two great guests, Daniel Ellsberg and Jeff Daniels. My appreciation to both of them for what they've done and for joining us on hitting this benchmark of 25 million downloads of this podcast. Absolutely incredible. Thanks to all of you who've been listening for these last 14 months. And I just want to say, just thinking about what he said earlier, Daniel Ellsberg, he was right. It is our job to turn this ship around. We've got a lot in front of us here. You know, we got good news this week that every adult will be vaccinated by the end of May. I mean, I don't know how you felt when you heard that the other day. That was, was it Tuesday? It was just, it was such a high. And then that night, the governor of Texas announces that he's getting rid of the mask mandate. You don't have to wear a mask anymore, and got rid of the social distancing mandates. Crowds can gather 100%, as large as possible. Doesn't matter. And it was, oh my God, did you feel the way I felt? Just like so high earlier in the day, hearing that everybody's going to get vaccinated by the end of May, which is just a little over than 2 months from now. And then Texas and then like 15, 16 states joined him right away, joined Governor Abbott in getting rid of their mask mandate and their social distancing mandates. So now there's 17 states that are wanting to pretend somehow either that, yes, as they said for how many months, that COVID-19 was a hoax, or suddenly the pandemic is over and everybody can go back to the way we were doing things. And this will undo all the good work that the vaccinations are doing. So I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do about Texas and Mississippi and Florida, Iowa. There's 17 of them. You know, on one hand, you just want to say, well, okay, you know, you don't want to abide by the same rules the rest of us are abiding by in order to save lives, then, you know, right now we're still short of this vaccine here, right? This week, next week. You know, you don't think you don't think your people need it, Governor Abbott? Okay, then we're going to use it in places where people do need it and do believe that this is real and it's not a hoax. Yeah, you wouldn't like that, would you? No. And frankly, the argument actually can be made the opposite of that, is that we need to figure out a way to vaccinate every single person in Texas and Mississippi and Alabama and Montana, Idaho. If we could do that, I don't know how you would do that, but it's like, because the individuals in those states who are refusing to cooperate and won't wear a mask, well, wouldn't we feel better if they were vaccinated? At least that, you know, I don't know how you make these leaps over these hurdles of stupidity. It's not really just stupidity though, is it? It's a political statement on their part. It's a weird political statement when you think about it, that they know that their time is up of ruling over everybody else. So you'd think they'd want to make sure they live a little longer. Why they would make decisions that may bring about the end of their lives. Over 500 million dead. You know, I've seen a number of things in my lifetime, starting from the month I was born. The first polio vaccinations in Pittsburgh, Dr. Jonas Salk. But, you know, there have been, 50,000 people that have died of polio. A lot of them were kids. But that's 50,000, not 500,000. I mean, all the tragedy I've seen in my lifetime, Americans sent to Vietnam to die, 59,000, not 500,000. Awful weather changes that have taken place, and the hurricanes and the snow and the cold down south last month. Not 500,000 dead. This is the biggest mass death that we've had to witness in our lifetime. And we need to bring it to an end. We need to contain it. And we can't do it by ourselves. We have to do it with the people that voted for Trump. What do we do to convince them? Tie them down and give them their shot? We can't make them wear a mask. We'd have to follow them around all day, make sure they never took their mask off. That's not going to happen. I don't know. How did we get people to stop smoking? Just as I brought up here the other day, and just we don't have a choice, because this has to end, and we have to save lives. And ignorance and stupidity and wrong-headed right-wing political fantasies are not going to save lives. Well, there's the challenge in front of us. They are our fellow Americans, so somebody is going to help me here, right? We're going to figure out how to do this. I want to thank our executive producer, Basil Hamden, our editor, Nick Quaz. Donald Bornstein helped us with some of the engineering and the editing here tonight. And I want to thank our control room engineer, Nick Palm, for the great job that he did on this special episode of Rumble. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you in a few days. We've got another piece of this 25 million celebration coming up here, I think sometime next week. So tune in for that. In the meantime, please take care of yourself. Be safe, be well, and we'll talk soon. This is Rumble, and I am Michael Moore.